Picture this. It's March 15th, 44 BC. The most powerful man on the planet walks into a Senate house surrounded by his closest political allies and friends. 10 minutes later, he's lying dead on the floor in a pool of his own blood, stabbed 23 times. Today we are dissecting Act 3, Scene 1 of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, not as a boring English class summary, but as a high stakes political thriller. This single scene takes us from total political arrogance to a brutal execution, to the huge mistake that ruins the killer's lives forever. Let's break down every single beat. The scene kicks off right outside the Senate. The atmosphere is tense because the audience knows what's coming. But Caesar has no idea. On his way in, he sees the soothsayer, the mystic who famously warned him, beware the Ides of March. Caesar, being smug and arrogant, smirks and says, the Ides of March are come. Meaning, look, I made it, nothing happened. The soothsayer looks him dead in the eye and replies, Caesar, but not God. Chilling, then a man named Artemidorus pushes through the crowd. He hands Caesar a scroll that literally contains a list of every single conspirator and the exact plot to kill him. Artemidorus screams, read this first. It touches you directly. Caesar responds with, what touches us ourselves shall be last served. He tries to look like a selfless leader, putting his people before himself. But it's pure, massive ego. He refuses to look at a personal letter in public, and that exact piece of paper stays unread in his pocket while he walks to his death. Now, they step inside the capital. The conspirators have a precise step by step plan. First step, isolate Caesar. Tribonius lures Mark Antony, Caesar's fiercely loyal muscle, out of the room on a fake errand so he can't protect him. Step 2, circle the target. Metellus Cimber falls to his knees in front of Caesar, begging him to cancel the exile of his brother Publius. Caesar refuses, then Brutus, Cassius, and the rest crowd around Caesar, dropping to their knees, pretending to plead for this guy's brother. Caesar gets incredibly self righteous. He delivers a speech saying he is as unbending as the northern star, that he is a god among men and never changes his mind. While Caesar is boasting, Casca sneaks behind him, draws his blade, and screams the attack trigger. Speak, hands for me. Casca stabs him in the neck. The rest of the senators jump in, wildly stabbing Caesar over and over. Caesar fights back until he looks up and sees Brutus, his beloved protege and friend, holding a bloody knife. Devastated, Caesar utters his legendary last words, Et tu, Brute, then fall Caesar. Meaning, if you are against me, Brutus, then living isn't worth it. He stops fighting and dies. Total chaos erupts. Other senators are running for their lives, screaming. But look at what the killers do next. Brutus, who is an honorable idealist, thinks he just saved Roman from a dictator. He instructs all the conspirators to plunge their hands and swords deep into Caesar's open wounds, cover themselves in his blood, and march out into the streets yelling peace, freedom, and liberty. Thinking about that visually, imagine walking outside and seeing a group of men drenched in blood waving knives, shouting, Don't worry, we brought you freedom. It looks terrifying, but Brutus genuinely believes that public will see their noble intentions. This brings us to the core clash, Brutus versus Cassius. Brutus is an idealist who thinks everyone operates on honor. Cassius is a cold hard pragmatist who understands human nature. When Mark Antony sends a messenger asking if it's safe to return, Brutus says, Of course, bring him here, we won't hurt him. Cassius immediately pulls Brutus aside and warns him, Do not trust this man, he is dangerous. Antony walks in, sees his friend Caesar brutally slaughtered, and plays a brilliant tactical game. He looks at the conspirators and says, If you're going to kill me, do it right now next to Caesar. Brutus assures him they act out of love for Rome, not hate. Then Antony does something terrifyingly calm. He walks down the line and shakes every single murderer's bloody hand one by one, speaking their names out loud. To Brutus, it looks like Antony is submitting. In reality, Antony is securing a visual hit list of every man who touched Caesar's blood. Antony asks for one single favor. Let me take Caesar's body to the marketplace and give a brief eulogy at his funeral. Brutus says yes. Cassius panics and screams at Brutus. Are you out of your mind? You know how powerful Antony's speeches are? He'll turn the entire city against us. Brutus ignores him again. He makes Antony promise not to blame the conspirators, thinking that a few simple rules that will keep Antony under control. Everyone leaves the room. Antony is left alone with Caesar's mangled body. The calm, submissive mask drops completely. Antony drops to his knees, begs Caesar's ghost for forgiveness for being nice to his killers, and unleashes a terrifying prophecy. Blood and destruction shall be so in use, that mothers shall but smile when they behold their infants quartered with the hands of war. He literally promised to unleash civil war across Italy, promising that Caesar's spirit will cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. The scene ends as arrives that Octavius Caesar, Caesar's adopted heir, is already near Rome. The trap is officially set. Why does the scene stick with us? First, Caesar died because of pride. He refused to read the warning that could have saved him. Second, Brutus doomed himself because of noble foolishness. He thought honor mattered in a ruthless political game. Third, Antony won using patience. He outmaneuvered a room full of armed killers using pure psychological strategy. Now that the dogs of war are loose, scene 2 is where the whole empire burns down. What was the biggest mistake Brutus made here? Let me know in the comments below and hit subscribe for scene 2.